Sauron is a shapeshifter. Throughout the history of Middle-earth, he takes on forms both angelic and terrible. In the Silmarillion alone, he appears as a werewolf, a vampire, a serpent, and in his familiar dreadful form. Yet before any of these, Sauron was another creature entirely. In Tolkien's earliest writings, he was a cat. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover Tevildo, the Prince of Cats. Sauron's form, like his master's, is so iconic that it may be a bit of a shock to picture the character as a great feline. This form, a cat named Tevildo, appears in some of Tolkien's earliest writings of Middle-earth. Thanks to his son Christopher, we have these writings within the pages of the Book of Lost Tales Part 2. This version is so early that Melkor is still known as Melko. Luthien is known only as Tinuviel, and the elves were at times called gnomes. We are introduced to this feline form with the following. Now Tevildo was a mighty cat, the mightiest of all, and possessed of an evil sprite, as some say. And he was in Melko's constant following, and that cat had all cats subject to him. And he and his subjects were the chasers and getters of meat for Melko's table and for his frequent feasts. In this version of the tale, Tolkien's concept of Maiar, the category of beings that includes characters like Sauron and Gandalf, did not exist. Instead, we find that Tevildo is a cat possessed by an evil sprite, or a fae. These were spirits of the earth, and have commonly been called other names such as pixies or fairies. In a possible connection to his later form as Sauron, Tevildo has a golden collar, which gives him much of his evil power. He lives in a castle on a cliff, not far from Morgoth's fortress of Angband, at this time known as Angamandi. Tevildo is described as coal-black and evil to look upon. His eyes gleamed both red and green. His purr was like the roll of drums, and his growl like thunder. When he yelled in wrath, it turned the blood cold, and indeed small beasts and birds were frozen as to stone, or dropped lifeless often at the very sound. As in the later version of the tale, Beren goes on a quest for the Silmaril, and just as he is captured and brought before Sauron, in this version he is brought before Tevildo. "Why," said Tevildo, "do ye dare to bring such a creature before me? Unless perchance it is to make meat of him." But those who led Beren said, "Nay, 'twas the word of Melko that this unhappy elf wear out his life as a catcher of beasts and birds in Tevildo's employ." In true cat fashion, Tevildo has an instant dislike of Beren, for he could smell that Beren preferred dogs over cats. And before taking him as a thrall, he sets Beren a task: to catch 3 mice in 3 days. These are no mere house mice, for they are said to be as fierce and large as rats, and they were allowed to dwell in Tevildo's domain for his own amusement. Beren, who had nothing with which to devise a trap, fails the task. In scorn, Tevildo makes him a slave to work in the kitchens, cleaning, drawing water, and turning the spits of birds and mice for the cats. He would rarely get food or sleep, and is reduced to a haggard appearance. Tinuviel would, of course, come to Beren's aid. Here we see she is brought before Tevildo by the door cat Umuyan. Angered by the disruption of his rest, Tevildo proclaims that Tinuviel smells of dog, and Tinuviel says that indeed she had recently escaped from a great dog, one that Tevildo knows. Intrigued, Tevildo orders Umuyan to take Tinuviel down to the kitchens. This dog was none other than Huan, though in this story he is initially more hesitant of Tinuviel, and unlike the later version with Sauron, Huan and Tevildo had met before. It is said, "None however did Tevildo fear, for he was as strong as any among them, and more agile and more swift, save only than Huan, captain of dogs. So swift was Huan that on a time he had tasted the fur of Tevildo. And though Tevildo had paid him for that with a gash from his great claws, yet was the pride of the Prince of Cats unappeased, and he lusted to do great harm to Huan of the dogs. As we see in the later tale, Tinuviel is able to cause a drowsiness upon her foes. When she has this effect on Umuyan, Tevildo orders the cat to be cast from the sheerest cliff. After taking her to the kitchens himself, where she sees Beren, Tevildo orders her to speak more of this dog. She responds, "There is a great beast, rude and violent, and his name is Huan." And at that name, Tevildo's back curved, and his hair bristled and crackled, and the light of his eyes was red. What Tevildo does not know is that Tinuviel and Huan had made an alliance. Huan had agreed to help Tinuviel, for the hounds of Hisilome loved Beren's father, here called Egnor. He also wished to foil Tevildo, and if possible, slay him. Thus Tinuviel proclaims it is a shame such a brute would be allowed to infest the woods so near to the great Prince of Cats. Tevildo takes Tinuviel and two of his thanes to the forest, and they discover a seemingly wounded Huan in the withered dale. As the three approach from all sides, Huan attacks. He kills one thane, drives off another, and engages Tevildo in single combat. And such an encounter was not much to his mind, yet was Huan upon him too swiftly for flight, and they fought fiercely in that glade. And the noise that Tevildo made was very hideous. But at length Huan had him by the throat, and that cat might well have perished had not his claws, as he struck out blindly, pierced Huan's eye. With this brief chance, Tevildo escapes up a tree. With the great cat trapped, Huan demands the release of Tevildo's captives. Then said Huan, "Lo, Tevildo, these are the words of Huan, who thou thoughtest to catch and slay helpless as the miserable mice it is thy wont to hunt. Stay forever up thy lonely tree and bleed to death of thy wounds, or come down and feel again my teeth. But if neither are to thy liking, then tell me where is Tinuviel, princess of fairies, and Beren, son of Egnor, for these are my friends. Now these shall be set as ransom against thee, though it be valuing thee far over thy worth. As for that cursed elf, she lies whimpering in the ferns yonder, and my ears mistake not," said Tevildo. "And Beren, methinks, is being soundly scratched by Miaule, my cook, in the kitchens of my castle, for his clumsiness there an hour ago." "Then let them be given to me in safety," said Huan, "and thou mayest return thyself to thy holes and lick thyself unharmed." "Of a surety my thane who is here with me shall fetch them for thee," said Tevildo. But growled Huan, "Aye, and fetch also thy tribe and the hosts of the orcs and the plagues of Melko. Nay, I am no fool. Rather shalt thou give Tinuviel a token, and she shall fetch Beren, or thou shalt stay here, if thou likest not the other way." Then was Tevildo forced to cast down his golden collar, a token no cat dare dishonor. But Huan said, "Nay, more yet is needed, for this will arouse all thy folk to seek thee." And this Tevildo knew and had hoped. So it was that in the end weariness and hunger and fear prevailed upon that proud cat, a prince in the service of Melko, to reveal the secret of the cats and the spell that Melko had entrusted to him. And those were words of magic, whereby the stones of his evil house were held together, and whereby he held all beasts of catfolk under his sway, filling them with an evil power beyond their nature. For long has it been said that Tevildo was an evil fae, in beast-like shape. When therefore he had told it, Huan laughed till the woods rang, for he knew that the days of the power of the cats were over. Thus Tinuviel returns to the castle, and speaks the words of spell, giving the cats their evil power, and holding the stones of the castle together. She commands the diminished cats to release every prisoner and thrall. Yet, there are only two, Beren and an old gnome named Gimli. After the return of Beren and Tinuviel, Huan allows Tevildo to leave. Returning to his castle, Tevildo's wrath is terrible, yet his master's is greater. When Melkor later learns that Tevildo had lost his power over the cats, he curses and banishes him and his kind. But the great collar of gold Huan had set about his own neck, and at this was Tevildo more angry than all else, for a great magic of strength and power lay therein. Little to Huan's liking was it that Tevildo lived still, but now no longer did he fear the cats, and that tribe has fled before the dogs ever since. Similar to the later version, Tinuviel and Beren would go in disguise to steal the silmaril from Melkor, but rather than a werewolf, Beren would be disguised in the fur of the cat Huan had slain. As for Tevildo, it is said, nor have they since that day had lord or master or any friend, and their voices wail and screech, for their hearts are very lonely and bitter and full of loss. Yet there is only darkness therein, and no kindliness. From this prince of cats, the character would later become Thu, a necromancer and lord of werewolves. From here, it is just a small number of tweaks to get the Sauron we know today. Sauron would maintain his necromancer and lord of werewolves titles, and be capable of taking the shape of one himself. And while he does not take the shape of a cat, and seems to lose a good portion of the Tevildo story, there are similarities that remain. Most obvious is that Sauron is still defeated by Huan, and taken by the neck in the hound's jaws. Later, in the Mirror of Galadriel, Sauron's eye is described as being like a cat's. The eye was rimmed with fire, but was itself glazed, yellow as a cat's, watchful and intent, and the black slit of its pupil opened on a pit, a window into nothing. We also see that, like Tevildo, Sauron is a liar and master of deception. And of course, the golden collar which gives Tevildo his power is interesting in the light of Sauron's ruling ring. The story of Tevildo remains one of the most interesting drafts of Tolkien's earlier works. The dogs versus cat theme is prevalent throughout, and is dropped completely as the story changed. No doubt there are many lines and moments that animal lovers will find amusing. Personally, I not only love how accurate Sauron is as a cat, but I'll always love that his cook's name is Meowle. It's a perfect name for anyone needing ideas for their new pet. In the end, we see that no matter the form, no matter the tale, Sauron will always be one of the most conniving and evil forces to be reckoned with in the wide world of Middle-earth. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.